When my mom was very young, she and her brother found OUIJA in the attic of our family's church. They figured it was safe and played with it. Whoever they talked to told them things like their mother's birthday. Apparently they thought it was great and ran down to ask my grandma if the birthday was correct. It was, and Grandma was very upset. She didn't know why a Ouija board was up there, but she didn't want them to play with it ever again. I have no idea what happened to the board, but the spirit stuck around. My mom is certain it's the spirit she communicated to that tormented her for years after the fact. She and my aunt have told me that their beds used to shake all on their own in the middle of the night. It was never really interested in my aunt though. It was always after my mom. Years later, although she still hadn't shaken the presence, it didn't stop her from getting engaged and having me. She once told me that while she was pregnant, my dad would stop breathing in his sleep. She would lay awake for hours and pray that he would keep breathing. Once I was born, she said the same thing would happen to me. I would be breathing, and the next minute, I wouldn't be. She endured a lot of sleepless nights, worried that I would stop breathing entirely and wouldn't wake up. I have no idea if she brought this fear up with her doctor. What I do know is that she and my dad split up not too long after I was born. My mom and I moved into an apartment just a couple blocks from the hospital that I was born in. We stayed there for a few years, long enough for me to remember a couple details about the place. It had a cream-colored carpet, and the bedroom was at the top of a set of stairs. I remember that it had a back door that led to parking spots from the kitchen. Beyond that, I remember a lot of yellow. I think its walls were thoroughly stained with tobacco smoke by the time I was able to form memories about the place. My mom told me that one of the scariest experiences of her life happened in that apartment. I was way too young to remember it because I was in the car seat for this event. She told me that she came in the door and set my car seat on the floor so that she could lock up. When she turned to do that, she heard a crash at the opposite end of the short hall. She whipped around and found that a decorative statue, which had once been pressed up against the wall at the back of the end table, was shattered on the floor. She didn't even get a chance to move before she smelled something horrible, and saw the end of the hall become darker as if sunlight wasn't shining through any of the open blinds. She was horribly frightened and picked up my car seat. The jostling movement made me scream my baby lungs out, and over it, she heard something heavy running her way. She said that whatever it was must have been huge, and she ran out the door with me. It took her an hour of driving around and a friend to escort her in before she would go back in the apartment again. When they got back, it was gone. The statue was still shattered on the floor, and her friend surmised that she must have knocked it over. But there was still a light ring of dust near the back center of the table where the statue was meant to be. She threw away the pieces, and she's always been a little sad about it. Apparently, it was part of a set of 3 statues. My grandma had one, my aunt had one, and my mom had one. All 3 have since broken. I have had my own encounters with this thing. I've heard something chase me down hallways when no one else was home. I've seen it tons of times, watching my mother while she's asleep. It's only come to bother me when my depression was really bad. I felt like I wanted to die. It was right there. I would be distraught and weeping because I was really truly considering ending my own life. Then all of a sudden there would be darkness near me. I'd go from horribly upset to terrified in an instant. At the same time, my suicidal thoughts seemed to be amplified. I quickly learned to tell it to go away. It would leave if I was forceful enough, but the depression lingered. The thing wasn't the source of it, but definitely seemed to enjoy the fact that I was suffering. Recently, I got on medication to manage my serotonin levels, and I go to a counselor. I am working on my depression, and I felt more like myself than I have in years. It made me feel stronger, and when I decide to do something bold, I'm much more apt to go for it now. Spiritually, I dropped a lot of my guards. I'm stronger than I was, and I don't need to hide. I don't want to be afraid when I know there is a force in me to be reckoned with. For the first couple of months, I was having a lot of experiences, as I used to have, before my depression got so bad that I couldn't see past living maybe one more day. They weren't major things. I would see a person that was only there for a blink. I would feel someone walk by when no one was around. At work, I would often feel like someone was touching my hair when there was no one even close enough to touch me. I started having vivid dreams again and just felt more like me. It's been absolutely beautiful, especially because my lows no longer have me contemplating actually harming myself. I'm not cured, by the way. I still think about dying, but it's not as crushing as the feeling used to be. The thought is there for a minute or two, and then the focus changes. It leaps and bounds better than the way that I've been living through since the end of middle school, though. If you're going through something similar, please get help. There is a much better way to live, and it might take time to get there. But it is so worth it. It gets so much better. I mention that I'm better now for a reason, though. I've been bold, daring, and as fearless as I was when I was a child. I wanted to live and experience everything, and I have been questioning everything that I can. One of the things that had always scared me, because of my mom's experiences, was Ouija boards. My friends and I had always harped on how stupid it is to use a Ouija board. You're only asking for trouble, and you're inviting in spirits that you wouldn't otherwise encounter. Why would you want something around you that wants to harm you? What's even the point? That has been my mantra for as long as I can remember, and I didn't want to be scared anymore. I bought a Ouija board. I told my best friend and boyfriend that I bought it. My best friend was upset with me, and my boyfriend told me I wasn't allowed to play with it. Don't worry. We have the kind of relationship where he says that I'm not allowed to do things, but just shakes his head when I do them anyway. I didn't intend to play with the board. I just wanted to keep it. I put it in my closet, and I guess I told my best friend that I wouldn't play with it. She's told me that I promised not to play with it by myself, but I honestly don't recall that. My memory has always been pretty bad though, so I believe her. I was also told by her not to play with it in her house and not on her street. She doesn't want an increase in activity at her place. It's bad enough as it is. The longer it was in my closet, the more I got used to it. I started considering where I could play it so that I wasn't playing in my own home. I had a few ideas in mind, but one day I felt really good about playing with the board. I got it down, out of the closet, and took off the plastic wrap. I said a little prayer to whatever higher spirit was there, and pulled it out. I played it by myself. At first nothing happened, so I moved the planchette in circles over the board. Finally, after the 5th time of asking if anyone was there, I felt the planchette drift towards the word yes. I asked, "Are you evil?" The planchette moved to yes. I told it goodbye and tried again. When I got another response, I asked the same question and got a no. I asked if it was good and got a no. When I asked, "What do you mean by you're not good or evil?" the planchette spelled out human. Satisfied with that response, I asked for a name. The planchette spelled out A, B, E, L. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Of course its name was Abel, right? I'm asking about good and evil, so it obviously gave me a biblical name. I asked, "Abel, are you here to harm me?" The planchette moved to yes. I moved the planchette to goodbye. I told Abel we're done and that he has to leave. The next spirit I spoke with called itself Finder. It told me it was evil, and I told it to go away too. The final time I asked the spirit to come forward, I got one that said it was good and evil. I figured that was the best I was going to get, so I went with it and asked it for a name. It's spelled Abexit. I told it that it wasn't a real name, and it moved the planchette to yes, but it was still the only name that it would give. I asked Abexit if it was just Abel or Finder with a different name. It moved the planchette to no. I asked Abexit if it was a human spirit, and the planchette moved to yes. I asked if it was haunting me. It also moved the planchette to yes. I told it that it had to leave me when we were done, and the planchette didn't move. I honestly wasn't sure what I should ask after that, so I just asked, "What should we talk about?" It answered, KIDS. With another eye roll, I replied, "Alright, am I going to have kids?" The planchette moved to no. I asked, "Do you mean goats?" The planchette moved to no again. With a sigh, I asked, "Am I going to have children?" The planchette moved to yes. I asked what the difference between kids and children was, and there was no response. I asked how many children I would have, and it said 2. Basically, through a series of resulting questions, this subexit told me that I would have 2 girls, no boys. It spelled out a series of things, all of which were ones I had already liked, so I don't know how much credence there is to that. It also said that someone very close to me would have 2 boys and a girl, and that I'd be jealous. It gave me some names for those kids, too, one of which didn't make much sense. Finally, I asked it if it told me that I wouldn't have kids to hurt my feelings. It moved the planchette to yes. I told the Bexit goodbye and forcefully said that it had to leave my room and my home. I said another prayer for the spirits to not linger and put the board away. For days, I've been thinking about the names given to me. I wrote them down in my best cursive at work. I haven't had the heart to throw them away yet. I can't stop thinking about Finder, and I want to use the board again. I told my best friend that I used it, and she wasn't very mad at me. She was upset that I would do something that dumb, and she was more upset that I broke the promise that I didn't even remember making. I apologize for upsetting her, but I'm not sorry for trusting my instincts. This thing might be stupid, but it's my choice to make. I have actually had a decrease in activity since I used the board. That part has been pretty okay. I am concerned about how much I want to use the board again, though. What I want is for it to give me some answers that I can't just muddle my way through on my own, or use a word that I would subsequently have to look up. I believe in ghosts and all sorts of things, but part of me doesn't really believe in the Ouija board. I will admit that it has a funky aura, but due to my experience of it, I am wondering if it's entirely a trick of the subconscious. I want to try again. My best friend doesn't want me to be in the room alone next time, but I am concerned if it'll mess up my findings. Also, what if I'm wrong? What if she sits in with me and something bad does come through? She doesn't need that lingering around her just because I'm foolish. It's been a week or so since I've touched it. Who knows when I'll use